Hello, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to the Modern Moms Roadmap to Balance podcast. This is Kayla, your host. And today, my guest is Gina Mundy. She is an attorney that specializes in childbirth cases. For over 2 decades, she has analyzed the mistakes that are made during labor and delivery. Drawing on this knowledge, she has authored the book, A Parent's Guide to a Safer Childbirth, to help parents prevent these mistakes and have a healthy baby. Rather than merely getting involved after an unfortunate mistake was made, Gina has taken a proactive approach by getting involved before childbirth. Welcome, Gina. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Kayla, thanks for having me. I am very excited for our conversation today. I was watching another one of your episodes, so I'm very excited to be on your show. Looks amazing. You definitely have a new fan.
Thank you. And with the one question that I ask everyone, what is your definition of a balanced life?
Work hard, play hard. Not even sure that's a balance, but I think I'm just a very extreme person.
Mm.
And I do enjoy working, but I also enjoy after working long hours and working very hard than to then enjoy myself. I feel like it's almost like I have to work really hard and feel accomplished, and then I can go relax. So yeah, definitely my definition of balance: work hard, play hard.
Mm. And I mean, we all have our own definitions, and it's about what works for us. And that is part of the reason why I love highlighting people's own definitions of balance, because it can inspire us to create our own. It's not about trying to be like this person that you see on social media or your neighbor or your mom and friend. It's about what is the balance for you that's going to work for you.
100%. Yeah, that's definitely my personality. So that fits right in with who I am.
So, what was your experience like writing this book? Because I know you're a mom, and I was reading some of the stuff about you. You worked on this book for 14 months.
That's right. 14
What
months
was that like for you?
well, it's interesting because you're like, hey, I've been doing the same thing. At that point, I was 19 years deep into being a childbirth attorney. And then
Mm,
something happened, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to write a book. Well, okay, that's a really big thought commitment, you know,
yeah.
and that's going to make you very busy. So after a couple weeks, nothing really happened because I'm already, busy. I still had the kids were a little bit younger, obviously, back then. And then, I'm still a partner in my law firm and everything else that goes on. So I had to make some decisions. And basically, I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to change my schedule. So getting up 3 a.m. and then going to bed by 7 p.m. If I did any later, it's like nap time during the day
Okay.
because I need my 8 hours of sleep. So that was one way, axe the social life. And then I started writing. And then for the first 3 months while I wrote, it was like something was wrong with me. But I'll tell you, writing a book's probably one of the best therapies I've ever been through.
Mm,
And basically, I cried for the first 3 months. Just so your audience understands, when I say I'm a childbirth attorney, that means I work on cases involving the birth of a baby when baby's not born healthy. Babies pass
mm,
or moms pass away during childbirth. So, unlike a medical
yeah.
professional who sees the good and the bad, I see the bad only, and then I have to analyze the
Mm,
bad for years on end. It's hard. So I had obviously emotionally suppressed everything from talking to the families and seeing what I see in my
mhm,
cases. So after the first 3 months, I finally stopped crying. It was like this clarity that,
mm.
I could help other families or spare other families from what these families in the cases had endured. And that was enough just to propel me into, again, making it happen. Again, I'm a very extreme person. So yes, axe the social life, stayed on my schedule, probably neglected my children a little bit, my family, but and I think in the end it was worth it because it ended up coming together nicely in a book that I am confident will help families avoid the complications and mistakes that I've seen now for 21 years.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think, yes, I did jump ahead. I meant to ask you at first what led you to become an attorney who works on these types of cases. But what was going through my mind is how I think when people are thinking about writing a book, they're like, oh, I'm gonna knock this out in 6 weeks, when it takes months. This is not like, you're not a professional author who's just gonna go out to a cabin, completely isolate yourself and just, chunk out a book in, you know, 1 to 2 months. This is something that can take months and sometimes even years for people. And there's no shame in having that timeline for yourself.
Oh, yeah. And then keep in mind, I mean, I worked on my book almost every day. It's that once the clarity, hold on, I got this information.
Mm-hmm.
What is that information? What can Gina Mundy say? What does Gina Mundy analyze and observed for, 19, 20 years at that point
Mm-hmm.
to help families? And again, it's like creating something. So especially if you're going to write, a book where you're creating, you're looking at your experience and you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
okay, do this. Because you can't identify, especially with expecting parents, problems without solving them. That's going to induce
Yeah.
panic, and that would be a complete disaster. So, you do have some
Yes.
responsibility not to flip the parents out either. So, yeah, writing a book, definitely, it's a big commitment. Good luck with time management. It's very difficult. But, when your name's on something, you want it to be good. And
Mm-hmm.
that so that time I spent on it, I just looked at my reviews 1 year later across the world. I actually just posted it on social media, but I had some a bestseller in the United States. Right now, I have almost 600 reviews and I carry like a 4.9
Wow.
5, right? That's 5 countries total. I have 5.9. Let's see who's my haters at 4.8. It's Australia and Italy. And my true
Okay.
hater is Canada at 4.7, but that's fine. You know what? I love my Canadians. I don't know what's going on with the 4.7, but I'll take it. My point is, though, like I worked really hard and I put my heart and my soul
Mm.
into this book. So if you're going to write something and you're going to put yourself out there, I definitely go go all in. And the lives that I am changing, please go read my reviews.
Mm.
If I need an upper, I go and read my reviews because the families are, I just read a review this morning and it's an expecting dad. And he's like, this book is my Bible. Actually, a lot of,
Wow.
it gets weird because they're like, oh, this is, they refer to my book, a lot of people in the reviews, as a Bible to childbirth. Not only like one
Mm.
person's like, in Gina we trust instead of God we trust. I'm like, whoa. But with what I wrote, I am dealing with little lives. And so,
Yeah.
that was another big part of it. But yeah, if you're going to write a book, go all in. And it may seem daunting and hard, but in the end, it's worth it, especially if you change lives.
Oh, absolutely. And so going back a little bit, let's do a little bit of a rewind. What led you to go into this work in the first place? What led you to become a lawyer who specialized in these childbirth cases?
I stumbled on it after law school. I know,
Mm.
right? So boring. Here's the deal. I wanted to be like a real estate business attorney, and I needed my first job. Got a job at a large firm that had those departments, but they weren't hiring.
Okay.
So I'm like, well, I'll go do the childbirth baby cases, and then I'll just transfer over when I'm ready or when they have an opening. And then when I was hired in, so I'd never heard of this profession. They do not teach you about this in law school and high school. I'd never heard of it, didn't know about
Mhm.
childbirth attorneys. And I was hired into a team of over 20 people. And this is all they did. Having a baby was
Wow.
on, yeah, that's what I said. Having a baby was on my radar. And I just wanted to make sure what I was seeing in the cases did not happen during the birth of my kids.
And you say like, oh, how boring. But I feel like a lot of us do kind of just stumble upon our our calling or our purpose. I mean, even for myself, the reason I became a therapist is because I got pregnant during grad school. So what I was really trying to do ended up not being something that I could do in the area that I was living at the time, or that I'm still living, because I live in a pretty rural area. my master's is in social work for policy and evaluation. So my idea was, oh, I'm going to go work in Washington, D.C. and make this big change. And, I found myself pregnant, and it led me into doing therapy, which I absolutely love doing. Like, this is the reason I'm here. I'm here to help people and guide them and help them change their life, which I am doing on a different level that I would be doing in like policy and evaluation. So it's not boring.
I love it. I love that. You were so right. Cause I mean, once I got into the field, I never looked back. I never looked at the business department or real estate, to see if they were hiring. No, I knew, it's funny though. I didn't understand it. Cause sometimes I'd be, I had 3 kids during this, and people are like, how do you have kids and work on these cases? And, or I'm pregnant and I have to go depose a mom who lost their baby during childbirth. Ugh, and they're just staring at me. It was hard, but it was like, I never ever thought I would, like leave the field. So it's interesting.
Do you feel like it more empowered you to be more proactive in the providers that you chose, or in the, what is the word? The whatever
Care.
the providers do, the care that they provided. There we go. What do providers do?
1000%.
Yeah.
So here's the deal with baby lawyer. Because of what we do, it's hard for us to relax. We only see the bad. So we're typically elective C-section at 39 weeks. However, my first baby was in 2004. That was not really acceptable. So if you want an elective C-section at 39 weeks in 2004, one of the methods was to tell your provider that you had herpes, genital herpes. So my friend, she did that, and she got her elective C-section at 39 weeks. I am like, I'm not telling my doctor that. No.
Yeah.
So I found
that's pretty extreme.
I know. She was happy she got her elective C-section, right? She's like, just go to my, I'm like, I'm just, you know what? I'm not putting that in my medical records. This is just weird. Plus, the doctor I had picked was a very conservative doctor, meaning he wasn't going to take risks and whatnot. And he's like, Gina, you got this, you can do it. And yeah, but I picked a very conservative doctor. By the way, I did wake up in labor, but it did not go well because of course I can't relax because of what I had seen. So he finally was like, you can have your C-section. He did in the end, I was a C-section. The next 2 then were elective C-sections at 39 weeks. And the reason we do that is because there really are no cases involving injury of a baby with an elective C-section at 39 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's the reason. It's like the lowest possible risk to baby. And again, you got to remember what we see. And, we're not medical providers who see the good and the bad. We just see the bad and we analyze the bad for years. So it's a little more difficult for us.
Yeah. And I part of what's like coming up for me too right now is thinking about all of the pressures that women place on themselves and what it means to be a woman and have this like natural vaginal birth. That's almost kind of like the highest standard. Is I was able to have this natural birth, no medications, out in the wilderness with basically no one around. And that is the definition of a strong woman.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I mean, natural vaginal spontaneous birth, staying relaxed, definitely. That's what I recommend. So, and in terms of, by the way, elective C-section, I would never, like, if my kids, I would not say, hey, children, you need to have, or I recommend, having an elective C-section at 39 weeks. I don't recommend it. I just wanted to throw that out there. And that is why I wrote a book, on how to have a safe delivery, a safe vaginal delivery. So, because I do want my kids to, experience the norm if that's what they choose.
Yeah. I mean, I think you make a really good point in terms of that you looking at yourself and, it sounds like more of you're on the like higher anxious side, really trouble relaxing just in the work that you do. And in order to have this like safe natural birth, you have to be relaxed. You can't be like super tense and holding everything in because it's not going to allow things to progress. I had a similar experience, although I didn't have any C-sections. My births kind of always had to be induced in the end. because I am a bit
Really?
more anxious.
Oh,
And yeah, I run a bit more anxious and I struggle to relax. I've done a lot of work around that, so it's easier now. But when it came to medical procedures, oh yeah, I usually pretty anxious. And so my third pregnancy actually almost ended in a C-section. The doctor came in and was like, "Oh, I was about to wheel you out." And then he came. So, yeah.
wow. You are like me. I'm like, there's not that many people like me, but yeah, you have my same tendencies.
So, like, given what you do, because I mean, you kind of hit on this a little bit, that your intention is like not to scare parents. And from the way you've talked about your reviews, the book has been well received by many parents. How is your book different from other pregnancy books,
Oh, it's not,
childbirth books?
yeah, it's not comparable. It's completely 1000% different. So, and just in terms of making sure, I spent a lot of time figuring out how to communicate, how to have a safe delivery without scaring parents. So in
Mm,
the end, after I was finished writing the book, before it was published, I gave it to 6 pregnant beta readers. So they read the book and then
okay.
they answer questions. And my number one question was, is this scary? And across the board, they were like, no, thank you so much,
Mm,
for writing it. But my book's not about what can go wrong. It's how to make sure it goes right on one of the biggest days of your life. And that was the whole point of it. So,
yeah. I mean, that's great because I think I couldn't tell you the title now, but when I was pregnant with my first, and just to give a little bit of background on where I was in my life when I was pregnant, I was in grad school with my first child. I was in grad school. My boyfriend, who's now my husband, he was working in Oklahoma and I was in Michigan. My family is in Texas. So I was
oh,
alone to my own devices in Michigan, pregnant, going through grad school. And I read this book that scared the shit out of me in terms of giving birth. I don't know why I picked it up. I think I was trying to empower myself to like
uh-huh.
be like my own advocate and all that. But really that book just scared me and it
What was
made
the
me more
name of that book?
fearful. I
Do you
can't
remember? I mean, obviously
remember.
it's like a while ago. Yeah, I'd be curious.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, because my oldest, it was with my oldest. He'll be 9 in August. So this was almost 10 years ago. So that is really good because
Well,
that's
I
not helpful
know,
either.
yeah, I've been talking to pregnant moms for a very long time too. And I learned pretty early on that if you, at first I would just speak and it's like they would turn me off. And I'm like, don't turn me off. I know how to make sure you have a healthy baby. So then that's why another reason I spent a lot of time. But, in terms of my book, it is not even comparable to anything like what to expect when you're expecting or anything of that nature. I mean, chapter 1 are the lessons from the baby cases, lessons from families, medical experts, delivery teams. As a lesson, we're learning from these past mistakes to prevent these same
Mm,
mistakes from happening in the future. And then each lesson in chapter 1 is then a subsequent chapter. So, lesson number 1, you got to get
okay.
ready for childbirth. You just don't roll up to the hospital and hope for the best. I tell you why. So, then you go to chapter 2, but it's all the information about childbirth that I find important as a childbirth attorney. So, when
Mm,
I get a case in and I'm like, is this good care, shit care? These are the facts about childbirth I rely on. So in doing that, I'm trying to give families like a good foundation to help make those, good decisions. So then, that there's another chapter in there. It's amazing. Chapter 11. Chapter 11, those are the
mm,
reoccurring issues and facts in a legal baby case. It's literally the reason that's what sparked me writing this book, is because
okay.
when something goes wrong, there are typical like things that are involved in the case. So,
Mm,
I'm like, okay, you guys have, and again, I don't just identify, for instance, Pitocin. Pitocin is the drug used to induce mom's labor, like you just talked about. That's the number one fact in a legal baby case. That's in almost every single one of my cases. I
mm.
don't just say, hey, good luck to you. I'm like, okay, I've analyzed this drug now for 20 years. I've traveled the country, researched it, blah, blah. This is how you have a safe Pitocin induction. So again, this is not stuff that you're going to find in a normal pregnancy book. And I'm not, as I said before, a medical provider. I'm just a childbirth attorney in their world. So it's a completely different aspect.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing that. And what I'm also hearing is more of like you're written this book so the person who's giving birth and the people supporting them can be the best advocates
Yes.
in that process.
You are good. Yes, 100%. That's part of solving the problem or making sure there's not a complication or mistake is prepping dad, prepping grandma, whoever it may be, to be a baby advocate.
Yeah.
I call him the baby advocate in the book. I think it's chapter 7. But it's like, okay, baby advocate, you're just not going to roll up to the hospital and just cheer me on and be my cheerleader. We're going to designate you as a baby advocate. Now you have a new job. Like any new job, you need a little bit of training. This is what you need to do and know. And yeah, I go over that in the book because having that second set of eyes on mom, letting mom, again, focus on delivering baby, focus mentally, physically, relaxing, staying out of fight or flight mode and whatnot. But a way to do that, a way to avoid what I've seen is to have that advocate. So then I guide dads, guide grandmas on here's how you be the best advocate to make sure, again, what I see does not happen to your family.
Yeah. I mean, because it's so important and can make a huge difference. And even just talking about my own experience in birth, I've had 3 kids. The last one, it was it was all over the place. My OB-GYN was on a vacation and it just happened to fall that he was supposed to be back. But with everything going on, I did not want to risk having my child on the weekend and getting some random doctor assigned to me. I was like, okay, I'll just do it with this doctor who's here. I kind of know about him. And what during my delivery process, the nurse wasn't a regular labor and delivery nurse. And I also have to point out, I'm in a rural area. I don't have very many options. She was not confident, and I could tell that she was not confident in what she was doing. She did not come and check on me very often.
Ooh.
She was scared to check like my dilation. And she often would wait or I'll just wait for the doctor. He should be here any moment. And I mean, luckily for me, this is my 3rd birth. So I'm like, okay,
yeah, you are lucky.
This is not okay. You need to check. You need to figure out what's going on down there. And if you're too scared to do it, you need to like call someone else to do it. And even in getting my epidural, she did not go and get the anesthesiologist. And the anesthesiologist came in and was like, oh my gosh, I was waiting for you. And I said, what do you mean you were waiting for me? She said, yeah, I figured that it'd be about time that you were going to ask for me. So I was waiting for you and no one ever came. I had told the nurse that I was ready for the epidural. She did not go and call the anesthesiologist and waited for the nurse on the next shift to go and do that. So I was in so much pain because she did not go. And because I was in so much pain, I could not advocate for myself to tell my husband, like, you need to go find someone to tell them that this is like been way too long. And so just like, even in that experience, like this was our 3rd child, but we didn't have that conversation because this has never happened to us before, but it's good to know like those things can happen and someone has to be there for you to be your voice when you're just not in that headspace anymore.
Yeah, you should have been able to give your husband the look and he should have known to go get them. But that's also, if you don't talk about it ahead of time, or he doesn't know he's the designated baby advocate, or he doesn't know what to do, that's, my book, and I get it up until now, there's never been a book for dads that will help them bring their wife and baby home. I mean, they work on the nursery so much. They get the house ready.
Yeah.
we're typically ordering them around. So instinctively, they do want to protect and, make sure both are coming home at the end of the day. But, that's where, again, my book comes in and will help guide them
Mm-hmm.
because, if your husband had been under the training of
Yeah.
baby advocate, and that actually, even in my podcast, I've the childbirth attorney podcast,
Mm,
I just did an episode. I did a solo episode where I just talk and I talk to the dads. It's called The Protective Father, how to make
mm,
sure how to protect mom and baby. This is what you need to do. So
yeah.
again, but yeah, I think a lot of them don't know what to do because they don't have the guidance.
No, no.
So
And I feel like there's a lot of people who just trust the medical system. Like, well, they know what they're doing. They've already called. We just have to trust that they're on their way. And come to find out for me, she had never even been called. They had not called the anesthesiologist. They just told us that they had called her.
Yeah, well, let me tell you about trust the system. So the first episode of my podcast is Bailey. Bailey had her baby 6 months ago. She trusted the system.
Mm,
And why did she trust the system? She's a nurse. She's a young nurse, but she's a nurse, not a labor and
mm,
delivery nurse. Did not have much knowledge about labor and delivery, but she was a good nurse, right? So she's like, I just trust the delivery team. And she did not leave with a healthy baby. And her
mm.
story on my podcast is, one of the reasons I'm doing what I'm doing. My book was out and it's something that she had access to. If she, she didn't know about it at the time. But we
Yeah.
finished that podcast episode and she was, oh, I just love her. I love Avery, her daughter. And it just breaks my heart. So after the episode, she read my book and texted me just telling her how hard it was because a lot of chapter 11, a lot of what's in my book, like if this happens to you, this is what you need to do,
Hmm.
happened to her. And
Wow.
so it was really hard. And in the end, it's like if she had read my book before delivery, maybe something would have been different because she does, and she has a lot of anger, a lot of guilt because she just rolled up and trusted the delivery team
Mm.
6 months ago, literally 6 months ago.
Yeah.
This all just happened. So
And
that's why
it totally sucks because we should be able to trust them, but we
but
can't.
sometimes you can. Here's the deal. I talk about it in my book. I am like, listen, your delivery team is huge. They're so
Hmm.
important. In one of my legal baby cases, it's their care that's at issue, analyzed more than any other aspect of the case. They are responsible for bringing your baby safely into the world. In my cases, there's three kind of delivery teams. Number one, the dream team. You want the dream team, right? You did not have the dream team. You had the second team. You had a team with a bad apple. Okay, that's your
Mm.
nurse. You have to know. And listen, I love labor and delivery nurses.
Oh, yeah.
The ones that are born to be labor and delivery nurses. Oh, they
Mm.
do their job for personal gratification, not financial. They're amazing humans. In cases, they show more human emotion than anybody else. But
Wow.
so if you have, you're in a rural area, really, can you switch out your
Hmm.
nurse? I mean, maybe there
No.
is more than one, or at least complain about her. So it's
Yeah.
hard. But you have your team with a bad apple, and then you have your third type of delivery team. I didn't know what to call it in the book, so I called it Bush League. That's when
Okay.
two more people on your delivery team suck. That
Mm.
okay, again, I've been doing this 21 years. Those
Yeah.
teams were more prominent, early in my career. I don't see too many Bush League delivery teams. But again, it's hard. You're in a rural area. So it's like, but at least if or at least if your nurse sucks, now we know your nurse sucks. You can't swap
Hmm.
her out because apparently she's the only nurse. Again, baby advocate stepping up and knows what to do.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because I remember they pulled her from, so my son is now, he'll be 2.5 next month. So this was 2.5 years ago. They had pulled her from like the ER to be a labor and delivery nurse, and that was like not her normal role. And they moved my nurse who was there to the ER, I guess, because this nurse couldn't handle it. And so, yeah, I was just disaster. And the hospital here, it is notorious for, being understaffed or sending their staff home because they don't have enough patients that are in the hospital.
Wow, that is so scary. I
Oh,
talk
yeah.
about, I talk about some of that in my book. That's where you gotta bad nurse. Nurses are so important. They're like,
They are.
they're bedside. And then now
Yes.
they
I
have
mean,
to
my
communicate.
mom's a nurse and my sister is a nurse. So, I mean, I love nurses. we're not trying to dog on nurses at all.
No, no, no. That's why I
But
said that
yeah.
immediately when every time I say, but it's like any profession, right? Some
Yeah.
are good, some are bad. I just did an episode about doulas. And so I love doulas. I'm a huge advocate for doulas, but there was a really bad doula. So I had a mom
Mhm.
come on and tell the bad doula story. But I have to preface it with I love doulas. I advocate for doulas. But because I advocate for
Yes.
doulas, I have to let everybody know that there are bad doulas. So,
Yeah.
same thing with the nurses.
Mhm. Yeah, I do the same thing. I mean, there are amazing therapists out there, and there are some not so good ones. So
Mhm.
it's definitely do your due diligence as much as possible to research the providers that you are choosing. And I know that's something that you talk about. How can parents pick the right providers? Are there certain things that they should look out for?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Listen, this stuff, the chapter I wrote, it's called The Good Doctor. And I've had people comment like,
Mm.
wait a minute, this chapter applies to like every doctor out there. So this is again something that, you gotta make sure you have a good doctor because, a lot of times you are relying on your doctor and their recommendations to make
Mhm.
decisions. And it's important whenever you're receiving medical care, especially during childbirth, that you do make those good decisions. And I say this a lot, but it's so sad because families in my cases are one decision or minutes from a healthy baby. It's again
Mm.
important for decision making and who has that delivery team, your doctor. So again, picking the good doctor is important. I've analyzed doctors who deliver babies for many, many years, obviously, because they are the main player. And you can't stick a bad doctor in front of a jury. So our whole we have, we've
Mm.
been analyzing doctors a long time. So in the book, I'm like, okay, moms, you've got 9 months to analyze your doctor. You're going to have to do the mommy analysis. And,
Mhm.
but, I'm like, okay, what am I looking at because there's doctors, just no doctor is the same.
Mhm.
Like
No. Yeah.
we're all different. So we're doctors.
Mhm.
So basically, there's two things you really need to fall back on, especially with the childbirth and your analysis, is feeling your instincts and intuition. What is that telling you?
Mm.
I heard a sad story a few weeks ago. It was from one of my friends, but her mom had received some medical care and passed away during the care. The doctor had done something wrong and she passed away. The mom was 65. This is nothing to do with childbirth. However, what was important about that is that right before she went into this surgery, she told my friend, I don't like my doctor, but he has a really
Mm.
good reputation. She did. And my friend, smart, and she's like, no, don't go to the doctor if that's your instincts and intuition. Don't do
Yeah.
it. And, so it's, I obviously maybe she would be here today if she would have listened to those instincts and intuition. And when you're
Mm.
pregnant, that stuff's on overdrive. So listen to
Yeah.
it, whatever it may be. Everybody's different. So somebody may want a doctor who's kind of overbearing and this is the way it's going to be. And somebody
Yeah.
may want somebody different. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
different. I want a low risk doctor who takes zero chances because of what I've seen. My doctors took me
Yeah.
off work in almost every pregnancy before I delivered my baby because they were like,
Mm.
let's just stop, and so,
Yeah.
but it was so following your instincts and intuition, knowing what you like, not just picking a doctor because, they delivered your so-and-so baby is important. But then the second part of that is also their communication skills, making sure you're comfortable with that, making sure they listen to you, how they
Mm.
explain things to you. Now, some doctors have the gift of gab where they can, tick, 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 tick. you got to be able to decipher, do they have the gift of gab, or do they really care about me as a patient? Because the day you deliver your baby is one of the biggest days of your life. You never stop being a
Mm,
parent. I mean, I dreamt of that day since I was a little girl. I mean, so,
yeah.
you have to be comfortable with how your doctor communicates. And why is that important? Because kind of like we just talked about, doctor is not at bedside with you. It's the nurse, it's the resident, it's the midwife, it's not the doctor. So the doctor finds out information about you and how you're doing in labor through whoever is bedside. So if
Yeah.
they can't communicate with you, or you're not comfortable with how they communicate with you, just keep in mind that's likely how they communicate with the delivery team. So just, and again, communication, a lot of times when things go wrong, there's a breakdown in communication. So a doctor that can communicate, does appear like he really or she really does care, is important. And then also, I have a section in there called the Yoda imposter. And,
Mm,
basically, good reputation does not equate to good care. So I had a case at a hospital, and the baby was born right after the baby was born, and it was not born healthy. The nurse left the hospital system. I had to talk with that nurse a couple of years later. She went to a different hospital system, but I was talking to that nurse, and she referred to the doctor from that delivery as Yoda. And I was like, Yoda? Are you calling him Yoda because he looks like Yoda? I didn't think it looked like Yoda. She clarified that we were talking about the same doctor. And I have never looked more confused in
mm.
my life, because that same doctor, yeah, I'm like, Google his name. He's done some, he's being accused of doing some pretty bad things to his patients. And this doctor was an OBGYN. Again, Yoda, I'm like, how does a doctor get the name Yoda who is doing such bad things to his patients? But
Yeah.
obviously, those patients, their instincts, their intuition, something kicked on, because he was eventually, exposed. The problem is he was exposed after he hurt many people. Again,
Mm.
be careful of that. And then in terms of who's going to deliver your baby, I have 20 questions at the end. And there's more to that
Okay.
chapter. I talk about going to trial with a doctor. There's a
Mm,
bunch of great stuff in there about doctors, but I think most importantly at the end are 20 questions. And they're 20 questions we ask every doctor in a deposition on the record to figure out if we can put them in front of a jury, or she, or we use that information to, okay, we are that doctor is going to go in front of a jury, but will this be used to bolster their credibility or discredit them? So it's, so those questions are incredibly important. And I remember thinking, like, why every pregnant mom should know this about their doctor, but it's things that
oh,
people
yeah.
don't think about. Because think about this. You
Mm,
ready? Let's see if you ask this question. Doctors who deliver babies are OB/GYNs. OB is obstetrics, GYN is gynecology, two separate fields of medicine. OB,
yes.
obviously, yeah, pregnancy,
Mhm.
gynecology, mom's issues. So a lot of doctors, especially as they get older, will do more gynecology. That's 9 to 5. Monday through
Mm,
Friday. It's OB that can be pretty demanding. So you
yeah.
want a doctor. So you want to ask your doctor, what percentage of your practice is obstetrics versus gynecology, right?
Mm,
I obviously recommend picking the doctor who's, in the trenches every day delivering babies, not the one who
that makes sense.
90%
Yeah.
of the time they're doing chick issues. So the gynecology part. So yeah, so it's
Yeah.
it's I mean, really, but until it's out there, like, I don't think people think about this. This is stuff that we have
No.
to go through in our cases. So it's always,
Yeah.
again, it's a different aspect, right? What pregnancy book is going to tell you to ask your doctor about obstetrics versus gynecology?
Yeah. No, I have not heard that. And again,
I know,
I
right?
have 3 kids. It's been almost 10 years. I would have never
Yep.
thought to ask that.
Mhm.
And man, Gina, like your book is very much needed, especially in this time when our like mother and infant mortality rates in the United States is at a ridiculous rate. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it's ridiculous compared to other countries that are similar to us.
Yeah, bad. very bad.
Yeah.
And if I'm asked this all the time. So here's the deal. It's the exact reason why you need to read my book. Healthcare and the hospitals aren't changing. If they do, I was talking to actually a doctor today, and he said something very interesting, and I was such a
Mm-hmm.
fan. I because I'm always on my, soapbox going, I hate, Pitocin is one of the most common facts. If you guys are using, Pitocin, whatever, but, him and his, because it is in all of these legal cases, he does not want to recommend, Pitocin induction at 39 weeks because he's noticing too all of the
Mm-hmm.
problems that come from that. And how it's like a cascade of interventions. And I'm like, thank you. Thank you. Because I have another doctor a couple months ago. So that's my conversation today. I had another doctor a couple months ago, which I brought up to the doctor I talked to today. He said that the standard of care requires him to offer a patient an elective Pitocin induction at 39 weeks if they are a good candidate. Just you're a good candidate. Your body can handle it. That's probably most pregnant, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
what? Because if you do have something up or you have a complicated pregnancy, you bet they're gonna induce you early. So it's like everybody else, if they're a good candidate, the standard of care requires them to offer them a seat. That's total crap, by the way. And the
Mm-hmm.
doctor I talked to today said that was crap. He would never do that. He's actually doing the opposite. But anyway, my point in all of this, unless you have one of those good doctors like I talked to today, you have to be able to, as an expecting parent or, dad, grandparent,
Mm-hmm.
somebody, make sure they're, ready and prepared to make, these important decisions, have an understanding of what's causing the mortality, morbidity, and whatnot. But I
Yeah.
think Pitocin is a huge, huge part of that. That's what we see in the cases. You know what we don't
Yeah.
see? Natural spontaneous birth, skip the drugs. So that's my big thing.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Gina, for joining us today. If people are wanting to get into your world or, follow you, where's the best place to catch you at?
Well, you can always follow me on Instagram at Gina Mundy. The best place to find out information about me, check out my podcast. Chapter 1 of my book is on my website for free, but that is ginamundy.com, GINAMUNDY.com. If you have any questions, you ever want to reach out, please feel free. I love to get emails from people who either listen to my podcast or have bought my book or I love it. So, but my email even is gm@ginamundy.com. It goes to my phone. And now so far I've only had good messages. So, maybe if I start getting bad messages, I'll stop doing that. But yeah. And then Facebook is Facebook. Facebook is Facebook. Okay. Gina Mundy, author. I do have a
Okay.
private account that I try to keep to family and friends, but I do have an author one that people can follow. But yeah, that's it. Thank you so much, Kayla, for having me on your show. You were such a great
Yeah,
host.
absolutely. Thank you. And thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And I hope you have a great rest of your weekend.
Oh, you too, for sure.